introducing and reintroducing our ministries and some of our mission emphases as we go forward, as we have done in the past. And Pender Go is a vital part of that, of course. Now, we're going to take a few moments here, and I want to invite Mark Atwood to come forward. He was our delegate to annual conference last week. And then also David Kinard will also share a word. Mark's going to present the report, and David will give sort of his reflections, his personal reflections afterward. This is something we do each year. It's really required, but more importantly, it's important that Mark, as our delegate, is sort of a liaison between the conference to which we are connected and the local church. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. So as he said, it was my privilege to, for the second time now, be your delegate to the annual conference. And it was quite an occasion. We probably about better than halfway filled up a hockey arena in Roanoke. There were, I think, I didn't get the exact number, probably better than 2,000 people there representing 861 churches throughout Virginia. And a lot was packed into 3 days, let me tell you. So I'm going to have to strive mightily to keep this report shorter than the actual conference itself. As someone who attends a lot of conferences, I have to say that I was very impressed with how smoothly and professionally run the thing was. I gather that this has not always been the case, but Bishop Sue Halpert Johnson and her team are extremely good at this, and I was impressed, as I said, with how smoothly everything ran, the quality of the people who spoke, both the teachers and the preachers and the other speakers and other participants, extremely well. Reason I say that is because, I don't get a lot of exposure to other United Methodist churches, and I never really know what's out there. But the quality of the people that we have in our conference is really quite high, quite impressive. So when I attended this for the first time last year, I was immediately struck by how it was not what I was expecting, which was a 3-day-long business meeting requiring large quantities of coffee. In fact, it turned out, and this was also, very inspirational, very encouraging 3 days. Speakers and the teachers, all very high quality. The context of this conference was, of course, a church that is rapidly changing in a rapidly changing world. Nearly all of the churches have experienced contraction, and there have been a number of them that have closed, and others that have consolidated with other churches. And we commemorated those. At the same time, there were a number of churches that have started up in the past year, and we celebrated those as well. So in her opening sermon, Bishop Sue, who, by the way, is an excellent preacher, talked about the need for renewing the church and avoiding the trap of nostalgia and pining for the good old days, which totally cripples us and paralyzes us from adapting and meeting the challenges of the mission that God has for us in this changing world, which is making disciples for Jesus. So the challenge to us is for adapting, not giving up and not yearning away for the good old days. She reminded us also of the challenges found throughout Scripture for standing with the poor and the marginalized, the refugees and the immigrants. And these challenges came up many times throughout our conference. These challenges were answered by the crowd by enthused applause. And I got a real sense that the churches in Virginia get it, and we are anxious to respond to the call, and we have a very forward-looking sense of mission. There also was some very good teaching from a fellow named Scott Erickson, who was from Portland, and he seemed like the kind of guy you'd expect to come from Portland. He was a kind of quirky, offbeat character, but very delightfully so, and very, very deep. And he talked about the change, the need for change, but change as something that the church is usually not very good at, something that we often, consciously resist. But he said that change is something that usually happens only when something happens to us that we didn't want. And without this event or disaster, the change just doesn't happen. So amidst all of this inspirational talk, there was also some business conducted. we had votes on ratification of 4 constitutional amendments, the most consequential of which was the reorganization of the United Methodist Church into regional conferences. And these regional conferences will be empowered to adopt certain changes to things like the Book of Discipline, hymnals, books of worship, standards of licensing. They will not affect the core things like our theological statements and so forth. There was also another amendment to add the words gender and ability to the list of characteristics that cannot bar a person from membership, along with race, color, national origin, etc. There was a statement added to the Constitution statement on racial justice to strengthen the condemnation of racism as opposing God's law, goodness, and love, and also adding references to white privilege, white supremacy, and colonialism. And then finally, there was what seemed to be a rather technical change to the educational requirements for ordination. So I can't tell you how those votes came out because those were taken secretly by cell phone, and the numbers are reported to headquarters. So I gather that they will probably be ratified since they were all really strongly adopted by the General Conference. There was also a lengthy report from a task force that is called Journey to Understanding. And this task force was created last year in response to a resolution that had been introduced apologizing to the LGBTQ community for a lot of harm and pain that was caused by language adopted by a previous General Conference. The resolution turned out to be rather contentious. And so at the very last day last year, the decision by consensus was, rather than take a vote where there will be winners and losers, let's get together a conversation, start a conversation going. So this task force was formed, and they've engaged in what they're calling wholly active listening. And they're doing this under the guidance of a Methodist minister in Belfast, Northern Ireland, who has been involved in trying to reconcile the previously warring factions of Protestants and Catholics. And the takeaway from that was they're seeing the church as not a big tent where people can be on the margins or going out the exits, but rather a big round table where everybody has an equal seat at the table. There were also some interesting statistics. How many of you love statistics out there? Well, I see the accountant does, okay. Well, there were a few that I thought were pretty interesting. 861 churches, United Methodist churches in Virginia, and that's even after the disaffiliation movement. 250,600 members, 75,000 average Sunday attendance every week. In the past year, there were 1,746 professions of faith, 1,280 baptisms, 41,867 small group participants, and 39,000 served in missions. I thought that was pretty interesting. Also very, encouraging to see there, in Virginia there are a lot of Methodists and they're doing a lot of things. And finally, the thing that we build up to during these 3 days, and that is a service of ordination and commissioning. And it's always very moving to see these people who have decided to dedicate themselves full-time to ministry. By my count, this is not the official count, but there were 15 licensed local ministers, 8 provisional members, 2 associate members, not even quite sure what all these things mean. I'm not a real Methodist, you see, but anyway. But there were 12 elders, apparently that means real preachers, real ministers, who were ordained. And again, it was a very moving occasion. So boiling it all down to my impression, I just got a very good sense of the connection that we have with our whole denomination here in Virginia. And a sense that the United Methodist Church here is moving forward, that we're not mired in the past or lost in reverie, but rather we have a sense of mission and we're moving to accomplish that. Now maybe David will tell you that I'm completely wrong, but here are his responses.
So good morning, Pender. Good morning, wherever you are joining us. I'm David, as you may or may not know, and I was privileged to be one of the at-large delegates from the Northern Virginia district at annual conference this year. It's my second year in a row, and I'm not going to counter anything that Mark said. I may add a little bit to it and just some of my impressions. I've been thinking of it, if Mark was the play-by-play guy, I'm sort of the color guy. I'm going to provide a little color commentary here and some of my impressions and what I saw and felt and experienced at conference this year. In keeping with that theme, the Berglund Center, which is the home of the Southern Professional Hockey League's Roanoke Rail Yard Dogs, spelled DAWGS, in case anyone is wondering, it was filled with the Holy Spirit. It was, in case we need any kind of reminder that church happens in this building, but the building itself is not church. We are the body of the church, and the body was in, I would say, pretty good shape from what I saw at the conference this year. There's a lot to be encouraged about. There were lively worship and song. There was a worship service every morning, impassioned speeches, and vital learning sessions every day. And some of the main themes that I discerned from the conference this year was the rebuilding, as Mark said, and disagreeing well. I really liked that term, and a little bit more on that in a minute, which added up to sort of an overarching goal, as Mark said, of looking to a new day for the United Methodist Church, it was quoting Bishop Sue in her opening sermon, looking to a new day. Part of reaching this goal, again, as Mark said, is understanding sort of the difference between tradition and nostalgia. Tradition is the passing down of customs, beliefs, and practices. Nostalgia is a sentimental longing for the past, characterized by a wistful or idealized view. Traditions can and should be consciously maintained and adapted. These are the framework. Traditions are good. Traditions are what we build upon. That is one thing that we want to keep. Change them a little bit here, maybe as needed. But nostalgia is a feeling of emotion about the past. And there were a lot of images presented about, remember back when, wasn't it great back then? Everything was so wonderful. And as Mark said, and it was a big theme, that nostalgia can hold us back. We're thinking about how things were, and we kind of want to keep them that way. And that's just not, the future happens whether we like it or not. Times change. Let's see. And one of those that popped out at me at the last second here was one of those traditions that we really must keep, and Pastor Bruce talked about it last week, was the Trinity. There was a lot of talk about, not that we've gotten away from it, but you don't hear about the Trinity so much as we used to. We talk about separately, God, Jesus, God the Father, maybe two here and there together, but you don't hear about all three a whole lot all at once. And I actually went back and read the Athanasian Creed, which was, needless to say, it was interesting. If you get a chance to read it, find a good English translation of it. It's kind of long and kind of, I don't want to say weird, but it's I don't know, it's interesting. But the part that is emphasized over and over is 3 in 1, 1 in unity. And there's a lot to be taken away from that 1 in unity. Back to the disagreeing well, something we can learn is we may all agree on everything for a minute. We will probably never always agree on everything, but it's important to learn how to disagree well. How do we move forward? We're never all going to agree on everything. And as Mark pointed out with the Commission on Reconciliation, whatever it was called, I think it was important to note that they decided not to vote, because when you have a vote on anything really, there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers, and that leads to hard feelings and animosity potentially, and it's never good. So we learn to disagree well. That's how we're going to move forward. Another thing important to point out that I got was that we are not alone in how we respond to these changes. It's not just the Methodist Church, it's all sorts of churches and denominations all throughout the United States. Things are changing. And another thing I pulled from Scott Erickson was that everything that we need to build the future is in front of us. He had a graphic with tools and building materials and so on, and there are some obstacles there as well. But everything we need to build the future that we envision is there. We just need to pick it up and do what we need to do. It's all there. The difference between understanding and agreement, we can learn to disagree well. That's very important. It is important that we understand each other and where we're coming from. Look at things from different points of view. Finally, there was an emphasis on the Great Commission, that we are all called to ministry by virtue of our baptism. It's not the first time we've heard that. And involving the laity and creating, again, I think this was Bishop Sue who said it, a culture of call. We listen for that call and we answer it, while building on the historical movement of Methodism. Again, there's that tradition. We don't lose sight of our traditions. We don't give those up. Those are there. Those are important, and we build on that. And that's where we're going. We can use it as a framework to pick up those tools and materials. And one last little thought that I've heard before, and I kind of heard it between the lines at conference this year, was, do we look at the future and what we're facing as a challenges, or is it an opportunity? And for me, I think it's an opportunity. This is a chance to grow into the future, learn how to disagree well, and make our future happen. Okay, that's what I have. Thank you.